Right on. Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So we're doing a super early live stream this morning. I'm up at like 4:30 here on the West Coast, and I just had to come out here and talk about some of the things that are now taking place within this credible threat theory that I have developed that is so obviously playing out now. One of the things that we have to look at here is the idea of these tariffs and what it means to the prices that are going to be resulting from them. Now, something I find very interesting is that already I have had people tell me, man, these tariffs are really hitting us hard. And I have to say, what tariffs? I mean, I work retail. I work retail at a lumber yard. I sell products that come from China. I sell products that come from Canada. And I sell a lot of products that come out of the United States. And people keep asking me, man, where is all the, what's happening now with all these tariffs and the prices? I mean, it's obviously killing us. It's causing the price of homes to go up. It's very painful experience. And I keep thinking to myself, what are these people talking about? Why is this the case that so many people have convinced themselves that there is all these problems that we are now experiencing because of the tariffs? And I think to myself, man, this is how they are doing it. They are pushing the elevated inflation expectations. There's a 90-day pause taking place on China tariff. 90-day pause on it. You know how many people have told me, oh, yeah, you may have domestic stuff here, but all the input costs that are going into it because of tariffs. And I'm like, what input cost are you talking about? Right? Stuff that comes from China? We still got a 90-day pause. Okay, let me back it up here a little bit. Here's a prime example of it. We got an announcement from one of our suppliers. I work at a retail store, right? I work lumber, I work hardware. From all these different products, all these different vendors, all this stuff, right? One particular vendor that I'm thinking about has made an announcement. Here you're going to have an increase in prices due to tariffs, and it's going to be somewhat significant. Right? Already made the announcement. Why? Because of these Chinese tariffs. It's going to hit them. They got to reflect that back into the customer, essentially having to pay for it. It hasn't happened. The credible threat of it was enough. This is where they're finding the inflation expectation and pushing of the prices, even though it hasn't happened yet. See, these people are acting preemptively. They're doing it in lumber too. Here, let me back this up here just another time. Let me open up. Hold on one second, guys. Let me turn off the Wi-Fi on my phone just so that I can make this. Okay, so this is a video, I don't know, it's one of the mainstream medias. Who is it? Here, let me just start. It's MSNBC. So, I mean, give it... Nice commercial. Oh, that was so fitting. All right. All right, there we go. All right, this is the...
The global economy took shape this week. After months of threats and delays, new sweeping tariffs went into effect Thursday, raising import taxes to the highest level since the Great Depression. The Yale Budget Lab estimates the new tariffs will cost the average U.S. household $2,400 this year, with everything from cars to coffee and clothing poised to get more expensive. And the already high prices on everyday items are poised to go even higher. But
all right, so getting even higher, going higher. Everything's getting higher, right?
Yesterday, South Carolina Republican Congressman Ralph Norman said those higher prices should be expected.
I think a lot of people are seeing higher prices. Our family's in the construction business.
Okay, all right, bro. You're in the construction business. I'm in the construction supply business. All right, man. We can talk the same language here, man, because I know. You're in the construction game. I'm in the construction game. You build it. I supply it. Let's go.
We get a lot of our timber from Canada and other countries. Yes,
a lot? Yeah, we get some. I mean, 20% of what we use here in the United States comes from foreign imports, and of that, 80% of that foreign imports comes from Canada. So there's a little bit that comes from Canada. I mean, it isn't that much. I mean, it's a lot. It's in good supply.
Steel prices are up, but it's for the good of the country.
Okay, joining us now is our
All
colleague
right.
Ali Belshi.
So that I find interesting about this is he does mention steel prices. And again, steel prices, for the most part, when it comes to construction, a lot of that is imported from places like China. However, we do produce a lot of that here domestically. Not only is it the steel, but also lumber. Right? And so now the accusations of tariffs and coming in from a lot of it coming from foreign producers is not accurate at all. And then on top of that, how many people realize that the lumber futures price right now is at $630 per thousand? When this video is made, it might have been a little bit higher. I mean, it was a few days ago that this video came out. But at $630 per thousand, that is the same price that lumber was selling for back in 2018. I mean, we're talking 7 years ago. I don't know where they're talking about high prices. That doesn't exist right now when it comes to the lumber game. Lumber is incredibly cheap, right? I mean, not comparatively to 7 years ago. It was expensive 7 years ago, but it's cheap today. I sell 2x4s. 2x4 8 standard and better right now sells for around $3.80. Back in 2018, I was selling them for $4.29. They're cheaper today than they were 7 years ago. Lumber's cheaper today than it was 7 years ago.
Belshi, which you can see immediately after the weekend at 10 a.m. Eastern. Ali, I'm sorry. Wait.
I love these news guys. They get all like huffy and stuff like that about this Republican who's saying that it's a good thing and they want to make fun of him and stuff. And I just love the entertainment of it. You know, if I was on the news, I would be so entertaining. Like, I would be the most entertaining news broadcaster out there.
Yeah. The costs are higher. They just beat the hell out of Joe Biden when he was president because of high prices.
Which is funny because Ralph Norman knows.
I just love it, right?
He said the actual thing. They buy timber from Canada. You get roofing. You get that from Canada.
Okay. You buy timber from Canada. You get roofing from Canada. Does this person understand what they are talking about? Absolutely not. The majority of the timber, the majority of the lumber, the majority of the roofing, the majority of the building supplies all comes from domestic suppliers. There is some that comes from foreign producers. The idea that tariffs is going to impact building to cause the prices to move up is not accurate to timber, roofing, siding, windows, doors, and all these people who are talking about the input costs because of the tariffs on China got a 90-day pause. There is what tariffs, right? All these people who are increasing their prices, much like the supplier who already made the announcement, hey, we got to increase the prices because of the coming tariffs, right? Acting preemptively, right? Driving the inflation higher, even though, right, nothing has happened yet. You see what's going on here? See, if you see it in this fashion, in which that they are using their words to drive the prices higher, even though they're not doing anything, right? And you see it in this fashion. Now, I know a lot of people are going to go out there and say, oh, what about this? And what about that? And they start pinpointing everything. I'm talking about the excuses that these people are using right now. Timber, roofing, these things are not imported. We are not worried here in the United States about supplying our lumber or roofing. But yet this news broadcast right here wants to make the accusation that tariffs are going to impact these two products, driving the prices of building up. Right? Now, if you are somebody who is watching this news broadcast, would you internalize this and say, oh my gosh, yes, the cost of building is going to go up because of tariffs? Of course you would. What else would you think? Right? What else would you know? You would have no other understanding of it other than the information that is being delivered. This is how they're delivering it. It's completely delusional. It doesn't exist. Right? All these people talking about how it is that timber prices, lumber prices are going to go up. They start driving their prices up. And I'm thinking to myself, you do realize that lumber futures are still at $630 per thousand. I just got quoted. I ordered some lumber yesterday. I ordered 2 pieces of lumber yesterday. There were some beams. They came in at $575 per thousand. $575. I put a fair markup on it according to the price that I was given. The customer says, wow, that's better than I thought. And I said, yeah, me too. What lumber prices are these people talking about? I don't get it. Right? Here I am in the game, doing it, sharing it with you on a daily, boots on the ground, telling you straight up, right? That these people talking about driving the prices of building up because of lumber are completely making this up. Completely making this up. And I'm trying to tell you that it's not happening that way. There are other costs that are going up. Don't get me wrong. The cost of roofing has gone up, right? The cost of siding has gone up. The cost of windows and doors has gone up. I'm not saying those things haven't gone up. These people are making the accusation that tariffs is driving the prices of these things up, and that is wrong. That's what I'm trying to tell people. The expectations of inflation is causing the inflation itself. And this is exactly what they needed. This is the game plan that they've had in motion since 2018. It's the same one that I've been trying to share with you guys since I figured it out, or been figuring it out since then. This is exactly how it's going down. As they raise this inflation expectation, they will raise that neutral interest rate. And I know it's going to make the economy less restricted. This is for the 90-day. Think about the 90-day pause, right? How could there possibly been input costs driving the prices of everything up if there's still a 90-day pause on this? So I know they're doing this on purpose to create the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that will ultimately lead to the inflation expectations to be elevated, which in turn raises the neutral interest rate, making the economy less restricted. The most painful experience is for those who earn the least, those who are at the end of the line, those who suffer with lost jobs, those who suffer with, loss of income due to the inflation that is created from the expectations of something that hasn't even occurred. They suffer the most from this, and this is how they're saving the monetary policy. People say, man, the rich only do it for themselves. And I know, I'm trying to explain it right here, how it has taken place. And it's due to articles and mainstream media news and stuff like this. Think about it. The people who want to argue with this, with the video that I am putting out right now, there is going to be people who argue with this video, right? Talking about how it is that lumber prices are going to go up and how it's going to, and all this, pricing and everything else is going to go with it. They are leading right into the power pendulum in which that they need in order to save their monetary policy. They want inflation and inflation expectations. They want it elevated. They've been wanting it elevated for a very long time. Now that they have it, they're desperately holding on to it. And stuff like this, getting timber and roofing from Canada, it was just like, do you have any idea what you're talking about? I mean, timber in itself is trees. Lumber is sawn trees. There's two different products that are happening there. The United States has a vast timber industry. You have any idea how many trees we send to Asia? Any idea? It's the majority of our forestry. I wouldn't say the majority of it, but it's a vast portion of it. I live right on the Columbia River. These ships are filled to the hull, right? Filled to the as much as they can get in there full of logs, heading overseas. People talk about needing to cut down more trees, and it was just like, why would you need to do that? I don't understand. We got a lot of trees. What we need is more demand for lumber. We need the prices to be elevated so our sawmills will start sawing more. Right now, we have an inventory depletion taking place within lumber. And that's not because of Canada. Right? It's because the prices are too low. And if the prices are low, the mills say, hey, we don't want to operate. To be able to quote me a beam at $575 per thousand when the lumber futures price is at $630. Think about that for just a minute. There is no demand. There's very little demand taking place. And that is the ultimate market, not these people with their delusional beliefs that it all comes from Canada and that somehow these imaginary tariffs that are going to take place is going to, somehow drive the prices of homes up. Yeah, it's driving them all that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You're absolutely right. It's totally working. Look at it go. Look at it go. It's doing it. Right? It's happening right now. Sometimes I think about like how it is that they were so successful at saving their monetary policy in this fashion. I don't know how many people realized it, how desperate they were to have that inflationary scenario take place. How, they were sitting there stuck at the lower bound of zero with their Fed funds rate, with no adjustment of Fed funds rate to be able to stimulate the economy with, using nothing but forward guidance in the belief of mass money printing to create an inflationary scenario that totally worked for them. Yeah. Here I thought my entire life that the Federal Reserve was creating an inflationary scenario that they couldn't control. I thought that they were going to lose control of it, that the inflation was going to run rampant, that you were going to see Weimar Republic and Zimbabwe and all the other, crazy money printing things that were just going to destroy it. I dumped all my money into gold and silver. I thought for sure, I knew it. I knew it for a fact that it was all going to happen. And then I came across that speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, and it changed everything that I was seeing about the Federal Reserve. They were desperate for an inflationary scenario. And they are doing it with their words. Think about this right now. 90-day pause on something that has been so beaten into us. It's going to happen. People are buying stuff off like I'm working it right now. People are buying a package off the retail shelf. This thing has been sitting there since before Trump even took office. And the people buy it and they say, man, these tariffs are really hitting us. Think about that for just a minute. These people are they are excusing their high prices, even though it's a product that has been sitting there the entire time that hasn't changed price. I hear these words. People tell me all the time, man, are you seeing the prices increase? I said, I haven't seen a single one yet. Nothing. I got the credible threat, the announcement that it's happening here very soon from a particular supplier, but I'm not seeing it in lumber. I'm not seeing it in anything else. People talk about the input costs going into it. I'm like, all right, whatever you say. We did see a massive increase in prices during COVID, but I haven't seen it since then. When lumber prices dropped, they haven't exceeded their 2018 highs. And so going back to that speech and realizing back then that their major problem was an inflation expectation that was too low. I mean, think about it. He says it right here in the speech. Ironically, the problem we need to solve these days is a risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. Well, what do you think they got going on right now? Keep that inflation expectation too high. The problem we need to solve is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. That's coming directly from the president of the New York Fed, John Williams. He stated that in November of 2018. To think that they didn't want this is absolutely incorrect. The Federal Reserve wanted you to feel pain and misery and suffering, and they knew it. They knew it was going to happen to the lower class. They knew it was going to happen to the people at the end of the line. They said if they didn't do it, it was going to create pain and suffering for the monetary policy. So unfortunately for you at the bottom end, you have to suffer the pain and misery for the greater good. All right? And then at top of it, you can't really say, hey, we're going to do this on purpose, right? The Fed can't say that. They're going to say, oh, no, man, we're trying to keep it from happening. Like, straight up lie. We're going to try and keep that from happening, even though they straight up said it. We're going to do this to you, right? Because if we don't, then it's going to damage the greater good, the bigger the bigger picture. So you at the end of the line who are already kind of suffering anyway, you're just going to have to suffer a little bit more. Uh, a little bit. You're going to have to suffer more in order to deal with it. And people who thought that you actually had a chance of a decent life, well, you're going to have to wait or work harder or just come to the realization you ain't going to get it. Right? Because the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high is what the problem that they're trying to solve is. The greater good, you mean the shareholders? Oh, well, I mean, I don't. The shareholders, the people with the money, the people who produce the money, the government, I don't know, just pick your pick, right? How many months do you project price increases? As long as, so long as they keep the credible threat going. Think about that. There was a time I tried to find it. There was a video. I've done 10,000. I've done like over 2,000 videos. I can't find them all, right? I really need to do a better job of like describing or something within my videos so I could go back and find them. There was a video that I had done that oh good Lord, that talked exactly about how it was that they were going to break the supply chain and keep it broken. I did not know at the time how they were going to do it. I just said that they were, as long as they can keep the supply chain broken. Now, I thought that they were maybe just like re-enhance the COVID thing or something like that and, keep people from going to work. Whatever. Like, I didn't know that they were going to do this whole tariff thing. Like, that to me was like, I wasn't like, that was not quite on my radar as far as like, the major plan for it. Point being is like, it wasn't necessarily breaking of the supply chain, but the pushing of inflation expectations. Now, if you can break the supply chain, you will create an inflationary scenario. Breaking the supply chain will create supply demand imbalances guaranteed. Right? If you say, here's a stimulus check, go out there and buy all that shit on that shelf, and then you take away the supply, right, and say you can't deliver any more of it, what do you think is going to happen to the price? Right? I mean, there's no other choice. It's supply demand imbalances. Boom, prices go up. Right? Now, if you have the credible threat of tariffs, then you have vendors who are saying, hey, I'm sorry, but we have tariffs that are coming. It's going to hit hard, and we have to increase our prices, and we're going to do it here very soon. Right? So what ends up happening? Well, it's just like, okay, so you start increasing your prices and preliminary effects of these new price increases because you're about ready to get hit with them. So you got to act preemptively. And so the vendors are doing that. And then now in turn, if you have retailers who are really concerned about it, and yet even though they haven't been impacted with it yet, they're telling their customers, hey, it's coming because they got the warning that it's coming. And now the customers are expecting it. Like, you see how this is working? They haven't happened yet, but yet the people are already expecting to pay a higher price. I could mark up lumber really high and say, oh man, them Canadians, right? And, like anything, it was just like, just make it up. But then what would happen is people would be like, wow, man, that seems like a really high price. I'm going to go to your competitor and see what they got it for. And if they are smart, they're going to mark it up with a standard markup or, a reasonable markup, and they're going to outbid me and they're going to get the sale. And so I'm not going to do that because that's not how competition works. And that's not how retail works. And that's not how anything works. I get a price, I take that price and I put a fair markup on it so I can be competitive and get the sale. I know how I've been doing this for a long time, man. I mean, people are like, oh, they're just, the retailers are just gouging or something like that. And I'm like, no, they're not. No, they're not. They're not doing that. And as much as people want to believe it, it's not happening like that. I mean, I know I'm in the game. Right? In fact, it's like so far from the truth. It's unreal. I mean, I can't express it enough. Now, when people do understand that there is a way that you can create a monopoly, a particular circumstance in which that there is limited supply, I'm not saying that ain't happening. The mills right now are in curtailment because of that exact thing. You can call them manipulation or you can call them, hey, I don't want to work that cheap. Which one is it? Is that a manipulation, or is this a saying, hey, I don't want to work that cheap? People say, oh man, you just don't want to work. And it was like, no, I don't want to work for $12 an hour. Right? I would love to work, and I would love to work for money, but I don't want to work for $12 an hour. And if it's $12 an hour, I'm going to go and find something else to do, because at $12 an hour, I'd rather sit on the beach or go surfing or fishing. Right? Does that, I think that would make sense to anybody out there. And if somebody says, well, I'll pay you $30 an hour, it's like, man, I'll be there all day. I'll work 12, 15-hour days. I don't care, it's just like, it's just all about profit. It's all about money. And so mills are no different than anybody else out there. And if they got it at $5.50 per thousand and they're trying to sell lumber, and they're like, we can cut all this lumber all day long. By the time we pay the electricity, the rent, the people, the insurance, and try and pay the CEOs a little bit as well, a little bit, yeah, there's no money in this game. So unless you actually have it at $6.50 or higher, where the mills would probably want to actually produce and pump the lumber out, how do you get to $6.50 per thousand? You have to increase the demand. If the demand isn't there, neither will be the prices. So this is the unfortunate circumstances that we now sit in, is that you have mill curtailments and inventory depletion. It's not a manipulation game, it's a profit game. Once you understand it for a profit game, it makes a lot more sense. If you want to blame it on greedy CEOs and manipulation, go for it. That's like, you'll never see it for what it is then. Right? You'll never see it for the bullwhip effect. You'll never see the Cantillon effect. You'll never see any of this stuff. There's a super chat. Let's go check that thing out real quick. We got Justin with the $5. It's not usually the propaganda's blatant lies that hoodwink people. It's the half and a quarter truths in the lies that trick them into believing it. Yeah, and I totally agree with that too. It literally is just in my opinion, most of this is gaslighting, right? Just the idea of a 2% target is a gaslighting experience for the 99% of the people out there. Very, very, very few people understand flexible average inflation targeting, right? And the people who do understand flexible average inflation targeting are very few. It's the handful of people here on this channel, because I can repeat it in every single video because I won't let it go. And, maybe the true understanding of those of central banking understand it as well. Nobody on mainstream media talks about it. Nobody else out there seems to be incorporating it into their strategies. I don't know about financial advisors taking it into consideration. And again, I don't mean to, offend anybody out there who's a financial advisor, because if you've been following this channel, you probably already internalized that, and you're looking at other financial advisors getting it completely wrong as well. So, sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody when it comes to that, by accusing, particular people, but I have to ask the question sometimes, right? It was just like, if people say, hey man, what do you think about using a financial advisor? And I'm like, well, I would ask them these particular questions. Do you know anything about flexible average inflation targeting? Do you know about the neutral interest rate? Do you understand, that there's a credible threat theory that has taken place? And if you can't, somewhat explain how that operates, right? I'm talking to the financial advisor, then maybe you don't jive with that particular person. Now, maybe you're very political minded or something like that, and instead you want to invest into politics and you want to have somebody who's politically minded, and then you can just say, hey man, let's invest to Jerome Powell failing or losing or getting fired or whatever. And then you can really be lost, right? Because those are real schools. Those are real, people who are really trying to take on that idea of thought. That let's invest in a way that, what if Jerome Powell gets replaced? What would that be like? And I'm thinking, nothing. There's absolutely nothing that I can use within that strategy. I'm sorry, I'm backing out. I'm not here, right? This is not the game that I play. The game that I play is, let's understand what the consensus statement says. Let's understand how it is that these other FOMC members are voting in a way to achieve that consensus statement. Do people even understand what the consensus statement is? Like, I don't mean to be like arrogant or cocky when I come out here and I talk some of this stuff, but when I hear people talking about how it is that the price of building is going to go up because of the tariffs on Canadian lumber, and I think to myself, do they have any idea that lumber right now is cheaper than it was in 2018? Any idea? No? Because it seems to be spread constantly out there, and I see people raising their prices on account of it, like this guy who does construction for a living. Literally a public official, right? What was he, a Republican congressman or something like that? I don't remember who it was. Some Republican elected official with a construction company who just said that it's a good thing that these tariffs on Canadian lumber is driving the cost of construction up. Well, I wonder why. Because you get to drive your price of construction up, even though your price of construction material didn't go up. Right? Isn't that what's really happening here? Inflation expectations, elevated inflation, creating what it is that they were looking for, elevated neutral interest rate to make the economy less restricted. And it's not a good thing for the people at the bottom line. We suffer the most from it. Our working class jobs don't cut it anymore, but it's not really for us, is it? Yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, Jerome Powell straight up said it. It's not for you. It's for the rich elite. I mean, he just didn't say it in so many words, but I mean, what else would that mean? Think about it. This is what he said. Right? He said, see, this is the problem that the Federal Reserve was facing, is that they were persistently under 2% with their inflation target. And I know a lot of people don't want to believe it, but they were, right? They could not get to their inflation target of 2%. After the great financial crisis, they utterly failed. And the problem that created for them is that meant that the Fed funds rate was very close to zero, and no more downward adjustment of interest rates could occur. So they couldn't stimulate the economy anymore with interest rate adjustments. That was their problem. That's why they needed inflation in order to raise that Fed funds rate and regain their ammo. The persistent, and this is coming from Jerome Powell, August of 2020. It says, the persistent undershoot of inflation from our 2% long-run objective is a cause for concern. Right? Many find it counterintuitive that the Fed would want to push up inflation. I love that statement. Some find it counterintuitive. Hey, by the time I was reading this, I found it impossible for them to do it because they were really screaming at the top of their lungs on the speeches to the other central bankers that the problem they needed to solve was the risk of inflation that was too low rather than too high. Find it counterintuitive that they would want to push up inflation? Right? Do you see the difference inside of this? Like, there was a speech given just a couple of years earlier where they were dying for inflation, and here he is trying to say, well, some might find it counterintuitive that the Fed would want to push up inflation. It was just like, you don't even push it. You couldn't even find it. Want to do it? You were desperate for it. I mean, come on, Jerome. Just say it the way it is. You were desperate. You were very needy for the inflation. Counterintuitive. Okay. Many find it counterintuitive that the Fed would want to push up inflation. After all, low and stable inflation is essential for a well-functioning economy. We are certainly mindful that higher prices for essential items such as food, gasoline, and shelter add to the burdens faced by many families, especially those struggling with lost jobs and incomes. Right there. August of 2020, he said that it was many find it counterintuitive that the Fed would want to do this because the people at the end of the line, right? He didn't say the majority. What did he say? He says families with lost jobs and incomes will suffer with food, they will suffer with gasoline, and they will suffer with shelter. And he said this in August of 2020. He warned you. Like, it's not like he didn't say that it was going to happen. People find it counterintuitive that he would want to do this to you, cause you pain and suffering and misery. For the lower end families, the people with lost jobs and incomes, these are the people who suffer the most. They knew it well ahead of time that they were going to do this. It was a warning, straight up. All right? We are certainly mindful that higher prices for essential items such as food, gasoline, and shelter add to the burdens faced by many families, especially those struggling with lost jobs and incomes. Here it comes. This is the best part. This is where they get to save themselves. This is where they get to save the elite. However, inflation that is persistently too low poses serious risk to the economy. Right? I mean, serious risk. I mean, saving the economies pose serious risk to those suffering with lost jobs and incomes. Right? But persistently low poses serious risk to the economy. Inflation that runs below its desired level can lead to unwelcome fall in long-term inflation expectations, which in turn can pull actual inflation even lower, resulting in an adverse cycle of ever lower inflation and inflation expectations. So right there, Jerome Powell straight up admitted, August of 2020, that the people at the end of the line who are suffering with lost jobs and incomes are going to be suffering the most. They're going to be suffering pain and misery. However, if they don't do it, the greater good, the rest of the economy, right? The rest of the economy, the 20% of the people out there who are earning money that they can actually be a consumer. That's another way of saying it, right? Because 80% of the people are suffering. Their paychecks don't go as far. The idea of buying a house is further slipping away. And here it is. He was warning you about it. However, if they don't do it to save the broader economy, well, then, everybody would suffer. So you don't want everybody to suffer. I mean, not if everybody doesn't need to. I mean, they could just make the lower end suffer who are already kind of suffering anyway, and they just have to suffer a little worse. But then not everybody has to suffer. Well, that's cool too, right? I mean, as long as you're on the other side of the wedge. I mean, I can't believe that. I mean, it's not like it's so funny here because what I find interesting about it is like, not only did they not tell us that they were going to do it, that they told that the people at the end of the line, you're going to suffer the most when this happens, right? So it's you suffer the most or everybody suffers. So why don't you, unfortunately, we can just make the people who are already suffering suffer more. So, that's not so bad. My advisor keeps trying to get me to invest in oil and gas simply because Trump said, drill, baby, drill. Who needs more refineries or drilling when the economic activity isn't there to raise prices? Well, I mean, I think actually that's probably the thing that you do want to invest into. You want to invest in things that are unloved, unappreciated, and unwanted, but then absolutely needed, and that's one of the things that I like about silver. But really, you think about it, a down economy, that's when you want to invest into things. Like, honestly, I'm not trying to tell people how to invest. I want people to pick out their own investment for themselves, do their own research. But right now, lumber prices are down and mills are in curtailments. There's blood in the streets. Just saying. Okay. So when you think about things that are down, buy low, sell high. So when there's low economic activity and people are crying and saying, man, this is terrible. Look at all the prices. Look at all the, the failure that's happening out there. Even though you may not see it in what you had anticipated being a crash, the crash is in transactions. The crash is in actual economic activity that is happening out there. If you don't see the prices necessarily falling because expectation is keeping them elevated, it doesn't mean that it's not a good time to invest, right? Like, it still very well could be the time to invest into that particular industry or into that particular products or that commodity or something out there that you are watching or following and seeing that economic activity slowing down. Because once it picks back up again, what do you think is going to happen? Is there a supply of it? Is there availability of it? Is there going to be business growth that comes from it? There's a lot of factors that play into it. I am not somebody who gives investment advice. I'm just not that person. I don't do that. I follow economic theories. I follow economic forces. I kind of see the underlying things that are happening out there, and I don't blame politics for it. So when it comes to investing, it's a different game. We all look at the same thing. Economists are not investors, and investors are not economists, right? These are two different things that are happening there. We all look at the same thing. We all kind of talk a similar way, but we're not doing the same things with the information. We're not giving it the same meaning. So it's important to understand that when I do invest, when I put things into particular areas, usually it's a very long-term strategy that I am playing out. I'm not doing things very fast, right? So most people take the information and go, what do I do with it? How do I put my money? And that's what they want, right? And so when they say, what do I do with the information? That's exactly what they're saying. What do I do with my money? And I'm thinking, what do I do with the information is different than what I do with the money. What I do with the information is I put it on top of all the rest of the stuff that I have been researching and thinking about, much like the idea of these credible threats of tariffs and how that impacts my understanding of the credible threat theory that then elevates the inflation expectation that raises the neutral interest rate, because that's the story that I have been telling for years. Like, my strategy on that has not changed. I believe that the economy is becoming less restrictive for the top 20%, who are the ones who are doing the consuming, since we are in a consumer debtor-based economy. You got debt saturation and you got consumers. So what do you think is going to be the position that the banking system, the powers that be, the, whatever you want, the they, right? Where do you think it's going to be focused on? Is it going to be focused on people who are debt saturated, or is it going to be focused on consumers, which is the top 20% of household incomes? I mean, it's not hard. Just think about the path of least resistance. All right? Is there resistance that's going to be met by trying to get debt saturated people to take out more debt? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of resistance inside of that. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that. However, if you can elevate the interest rates, get a return on capital investment that's elevated, this is benefiting the top 20%, and at the same time, you got the CPI coming in at moderately above 2%, which is ultimately a lower inflation reading. Donald Trump saying there's low inflation. Not no inflation, low inflation. All right? And so with elevated inflation expectation, keeping the interest rates elevated, keeping the prices elevated, not the prices, but the perceived idea of prices being elevated, this is damaging to the lower 80% of people. Meanwhile, the reality of the situation is the top 20% are getting ever increasing amounts of income, at the same time deploying that into an economy that is far less restricted than anybody had ever realized. This is really functioning for them, right? Or the people who can see it and then take advantage of it, right? I mean, you think about it, guys. I'm a working class individual who's driving, my net worth of vehicles is probably less than I don't know, well, Suburban's kind of, I don't know, what, maybe $5,000 altogether? Like, I'm sitting here seeing it and I'm like, okay, I cannot take out debt to buy a luxurious experience that's going to put me on the bottom side of the wedge. What I have to do is work extra hard, extra long for an extended period of time to get the income beyond that of my bills, save as much as I possibly can, keep my expenses low, and then put those extra funds into something that is going to have a return. If I don't do that, there is no way that I can make it. There's just no way. Right? And so as I do that, I find it easier and easier to do it, and I find it easier and easier to actually acquire assets, find, the ability to acquire a house, to, find connections and make networking happen, work for me, and all the other stuff that's out there. Most people just don't realize that it's so abundant out there. They just keep it stuck in their head that it's limited. And then when they read articles or find news broadcasts like the one that came out on MSNBC talking about how timber and roofing come from Canada, and I'm thinking to myself, well, there's one of the reasons how the contractor and all the other people in the supply chain can increase their prices, talking about input cost of the expenses, even though it hasn't occurred. Okay? Elevated inflation expectation leads to real inflation. And you got to remember, it's inflation of prices. That's symptoms of inflation, really. Inflation is the expansion of money and credit. It's the prices that are the symptoms of it. And if the prices can move on expectations, tell me, how needed is it to print money when you can just push the idea of tariffs, the credible threat of tariffs, and then get people to start charging a higher price for their goods and services? Right? Again, what did John Williams need? The problem they needed to solve was the risk of inflation that was persistently too low rather than too high. Do they have it persistently high? I think they do, solving one of their problems. Not one of their problems, the problem. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just kind of dominating this one, aren't I? Okay, we're 45 minutes into it. What time is it? All right, guys. I'm going to give it like another 10 minutes, and I'm going to go get ready for work. My advice... Oh, we already read that one. My advisor keeps telling me to... Yeah, because Trump says drill, baby, drill. You think about that. If you drill, baby, drill, and you overproduce oil, and then you're going to destroy the oil companies, and then there won't be any oil to drill, and then the price of gas will really go up. So, yeah, go ahead and invest into the oil companies, get them to drill, and just crash themselves with a lowering of price. You're going to have to suffer through that. Probably should have bought during, the actual crashing of it, and then when there's nobody out there producing oil, you can hopefully have picked the right winners. I don't know. I'm just babbling on, guys. All right. Great content. Hopefully he gets some sleep, though. Yeah, I fell asleep early last night, guys, so I'm good. It's just another way of describing manifestation. Canford just laid my brother off last week. I gave him a heads up with a clip from your videos. Right on, Scott. See, now, again, like, I don't want to be like the doomsdayer or the teller of bad news or anything like that, but unfortunately there is situations in which you can just see taking place. Like, I mean, it isn't hard for me to recognize that when I go to place an order and I say, hey, do you happen to have this particular dimension of lumber? And they say, I don't know, let me look. And I think to myself, oh boy, right, here we go. That's a gap in inventory. Not everybody has a supply of inventory, and sometimes you have to hit different vendors in order to acquire the lumber needs that you're looking for. That is not something that happens in an abundant economy. Right? That's a limited inventory lumber situation. Just like your brother being laid off from Canford, this is very much in line with things that I have been reading about for the last year and a half. So if they are shutting down and cutting back on run times, like they call them lines, right? Anyway, if they cut back on production, they cut back on the workforce, they cut back on buying of logs, loggers start cutting back on their production, right? Because if the forest industry is now getting hit by the lumber mills, at the same time, foreign nations are giving us the finger on logs because, they don't want to buy our products because of all the credible threats of tariffs that we're throwing around. Our loggers start suffering because of that. Well, logging operations are generally small-time operations. They're usually family-run operations that aren't that massive. There are big logging operations, don't get me wrong. There's some pretty good-sized, people with a lot of equipment and a lot of money invested and stuff like that. But for the most part, you're not going to find nationwide logging operations. It doesn't work like that. Most of them are small-time contractors. And so once these people start shutting down their operations and close up shop, that's not like they fire back up again. Like these, you kind of have to be, raising or kind of build up into the industry. And if you're a big-time operation that shuts down, then you're not going to fire back up again. Or it may not be so easy to fire right back up again. This is the problem that I think a lot of people are misunderstanding about this industry. Okay? They think, oh, you can just go and do it. Like even just building a house. Most houses are built by small-time family-run operations, mom-and-pop operations. Right? There are not nationwide builders, and that's what everybody focuses in on. But to understand that the majority of residential homes, a single individual home, is generally built by an individual person, right? And it's a contractor who hires other people to help assemble that house. But for the most part, again, it's just him and his maybe, a small-time crew, sometimes they get bigger. You find bigger operations in more populated areas. But like out here, like where I live, I don't like. There's no like. There might be national builder out here somewhere, but I don't see him like coming into my store or anything like that. And everybody that I know is all locals building homes for people who need homes around here. And like I said, once those guys are gone, it's not like you can just fire right back up again. I mean, it doesn't take much equipment really to build a house, but it does take some investment, and it takes the understanding, the logistics behind it all. And that's really where I think a lot of times that people think, well, you can just fire it up and just start building homes again. Not really. Like if you're in the game, then it's pretty easy to ramp up production. But if you haven't done it, you got to build the network, you got to build the communications, you got to build the subcontractor network. You got to there's a lot to do in order to just ramp it up production into full swing. Some people could do it a lot faster than others, but for the most part, it's a business like anything else that you have to build over time. What time is it? Okay, 51. Yeah, I'm gonna call it quits here in just a few minutes. So when mills go into curtailment, log prices probably drop at first, cause loggers have a glut of logs, the loss their buyer for. That does happen, yes. And then at the same time, there's also a lot of restrictions that end up taking place within the logging industry itself. So you have like a lot of permitting issues that take place, or government interference that happens that causes the log prices to be elevated, which even hurts them, hurts the mill's profit even more, which cuts back on even more production. So this is kind of like almost self-defeating. This is kind of one of the idea that Donald Trump was given, that they're going to release government lands for timber operations. And I'm thinking, really ultimately the problem that really needs to be faced is the profit needs to be there, right? If the profit's there, then people will work. That's all there is to it. And so if you make the profit difficult, or the demand is just simply not available, then no matter what, like government interference or interactions or subsidies or whatever that happens there's nothing that can make it work. All right. I think the Fed won't cut interest rates and the market might start to crash. Do you think that's likely scenario? Well, I don't really pay attention to any of that interest rate cutting nonsense. What I think about and what I pay attention to is the public's belief and idea of what it is that those interest rates are going to be doing into the future, because that is the actual monetary policy. It's not the interest rate cut. We have to remember, interest rate cuts have 6 months to a year before they really impact the economy. So if you want to talk about what they're going to do 6 months to a year from now, okay, well, maybe that. But I believe that the elevated inflation expectation has raised the neutral interest rate, making the economy far less restricted than anybody has ever given it credit for. Therefore, the Federal Reserve really doesn't need to cut interest rates so long as that inflation expectations continues to be persistent going into the future. Are they going to cut going into the future? Maybe. They're trying to get to neutral. And if neutral is still below the Fed funds rate, according to the Federal Reserve, then it's very likely they will cut. But what they are trying to cut to is neutral. And if neutral rate continues to rise, then the idea of cutting rates is no longer needed. Right? Now, what can raise that? What can lower that? Expectations. So paying attention to what's going on, especially with news broadcasts that are giving such delusional ideas of what's causing lumber prices to go up, like Canadian tariffs and roofing that comes from them. And it's just like not understanding that the majority of building materials is a domestic supply. This is the type of stuff that we have to pay attention to, because that's what's creating it. That's what's creating the monetary policy. The interest rate adjustments isn't the big deal anymore, right? They haven't been a big deal since quantitative easing. Right? When the Federal Reserve took interest rates to zero, interest rate adjustments no longer became an effective tool. Ben Bernanke talked about it 20 plus years ago. We have to think about it in this way. If we don't, then you're going to be stuck in the old mentality of how it is that they are gaslighting you. right? And or you're stuck in the old mentality, and that is gaslighting you. That's what I meant to say. All right. I mean, you think about it. Ben Bernanke knew a long time ago that the adjustment of interest rates was no longer going to be an effective tool. He said it. Here, let me read it to you. It says here, it's because central banks conveniently conduct monetary policy by manipulating the short-term nominal interest rates. That's the one you're asking about, right? Whether or not they're going to be cutting rates into the future. Some observers have concluded that when that key rate stands at zero, the central bank has, quote, run out of ammunition. That is, no longer has the power to expand aggregate demand and hence economic activity. So think about it, aggregate demand and economic activity. Who's doing economic activity right now? The top 20%. Where's the demand? It's in the top 20%. Who's doing the consuming? The top 20%. Do they need to lower interest rates in order to spark aggregate demand in the top 20%? Apparently not. Because adjustment of interest rates is no longer the effective tool. Nobody knows that except for me and 247 people out here on the Uneducated Economist, right? But it says it right there. The central bank has run out of ammunition when they hit the lower bound of zero, that expanding aggregate demand and hence economic activity. So apparently most people think that if you lower rates, you're going to spark economic activity and demand. But right now we have sparked economic activity and demand, and we didn't lower interest rates. It's happening in the top 20%. I keep repeating it over and over again because if we don't observe it, then you're going to miss it. Because most people are waiting for it to happen in the bottom 80%. I'm trying to tell you, it's not going to happen for you. You no longer matter. We have to take that into consideration. They're not doing anything for us. We suffer pain and misery. If we don't, the top 20%, everybody else is going to suffer too. Now, that's bad. So what's worse, the bottom people suffering or everybody suffering? That's what they are facing. They could have let everybody suffer, but instead, they're just going to let the bottom suffer, and the top 20% are going to kick ass. It is true that once the policy rate has been driven down to zero, a central bank can no longer use its traditional means of stimulating aggregate demand and thus operating in less familiar territory. So this is how most people see it. They spark aggregate demand by the adjustment of interest rates, but that's not the effective tool. After they hit the lower bound of zero, they found a new tool to stimulate aggregate demand. And that new tool to stimulate aggregate demand is not the adjustment of interest rates. And that new tool to stimulate aggregate demand is not there to benefit 80% of the people. It's there to benefit 20% of the people because 20% of the people at the top are doing better than 70% of the consumption. See it this way? You see what's going on here? Just think about it. You don't matter anymore. It's unfortunate. I don't like saying it out loud. It's bad to say it out loud. It feels negative to say it out loud, but it's the unfortunate circumstances that we are now in. Okay? So it is true that it can no longer use its traditional means of stimulating aggregate demand and thus will be operating in less familiar territory. The central bank's inability to use its traditional methods may complicate the policy-making process and introduce uncertainty. No kidding. Uncertainty into the size and timing of the economic response and the policy action. Hence, I agree that the situation is one to be avoided if possible, right? So this is the way that majority of the people are seeing it. Interest rate adjustments are the way that the Federal Reserve is going to stimulate the economy. Okay. Now he goes on to say this. He goes on to say it again. Some observers have concluded that when the central bank's policy rate has fallen to zero, its practical minimum monetary policy loses its ability to further stimulate aggregate demand and the economy. At a broad conceptual level, and in my view, in practice as well, this conclusion is clearly mistaken. Boom. They don't need to adjust rates. It is clearly mistaken that they have to, because they have other ideas on what they can do to stimulate aggregate demand. Okay? Nobody knows it. I mean, Ben Bernanke talked about it over 20-something years ago. Just saying, right? Nobody wanted to hear it. Everybody said he was an idiot. That's part of the game plan, too. Just convince everybody out there who is trying to see what's going on in the economy, blame Bernanke for being a complete idiot so they'll never see this, ever see it. Yeah. At a broad conceptual level, and in my view and practice as well, this conclusion is clearly mistaken. Indeed, under a fiat, that is, paper money system, a government in practice with the central bank in cooperation with other agencies should always be able to generate increased nominal spending and inflation, even when the short-term nominal interest rate is at zero. They figured out a way to stimulate aggregate demand without the adjustment of interest rates. They figured out a way to do it. You know what he used for a description of this new tool? This is my favorite part of the speech. I love this part. This is my favorite part. The conclusion that deflation is always reversible under a fiat system follows from basic economic reasoning. A little parable proves useful today. Proves useful today. An ounce of gold sells for $300 more or less. Again, this was back in 2002. Sells for $300 more or less. Now suppose that a modern alchemist solves his subject's oldest problem by finding a way to produce unlimited amounts of new gold at essentially no cost. Moreover, his invention is widely publicized and scientifically verified, and he announces his intention to begin massive production of gold within days. What happens to the price of gold? Presumably, the potentially unlimited supply of cheap gold would cause the market price of gold to plummet. Indeed, if the market for gold is to any degree efficient, the price of gold would collapse immediately after the announcement, of the invention, before the alchemist had produced and marketed a single ounce of the yellow metal. You see that? They don't need to adjust anything. They can just use their words. 90-day pause on tariffs that everybody has convinced themselves are going to take place has raised the prices of everything. They didn't do anything. It was a beautiful gold machine. They got the inflation that they were looking for. You see what's going on? They needed inflation and inflation expectations to be elevated to raise the neutral interest rate. Raising the neutral interest rate has now made the economy far less restricted in the financial terms. This less restriction on the economy is making it better for the top 20% as the return on capital investment is now elevated. At the same time, things like the CPI are coming in lower. If you cannot see how this is driving the wedge of inequality, I don't know how else to describe it to you. We can blame it on politics all day long. That's fine, right? But to understand that it's the expansion, the increase, the new money, and how it is that people are deploying that new money into the economy that is creating the situation that we are now facing. If you cannot see that, I don't know what else to tell you. Right? This is how it's going down. And so as I see things like a 90-day pause on Chinese tariffs, as I see the ever-increasing amounts of misinformation about what tariffs are going to do to Canadian lumber, as I see the ever-increasing amounts of people who have convinced themselves that the prices are going to go elevated and actually creating the elevated prices, I look at what it is that the Federal Reserve needed for their monetary policy, and they are winning. They are absolutely winning. And as much as I try to push back against it and try to show people how it is that we can truly end the Fed, everything that they try to blame the Fed for is actually giving them the power that they need. It's the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life, but at the same time, I feel that I'm taking full advantage of it. I'm not worried about the investments that I have placed my money into. I'm not worried about my future. I'm not worried about anything that's taken place out there. I do not live in the fear and uncertainty and doubt like most people are right now. I just don't do it. Right? I'm very confident in what it is that I'm doing because I have internalized the information not through the mainstream media, but through the documents of the Federal Reserve itself. I've tried to encourage everybody else to do the same thing. The credible threat theory is by far the most accurate one. Let's see here. If you spend it, you don't have it to generate more income. BTC pumping. Is it? What's it up to right now? It was like 120,000. That was crazy. Gresham's law. It was cool. Thank you so much for being here. We're an hour into this live stream. I was only intending on going for like a half an hour, but this was a lot of fun to break this stuff down. Again, as we see it taking place, as we internalize and understand the credible threat theory for what it is, or what it is that we have developed here on this channel, understanding that they were wanting and pushing inflation and inflation expectation to raise the neutral interest rate, we see the economy becoming less restricted for the top 20% who are the consumers in the economy. That is exactly what they are intending on doing. The bottom 80% of the people are sitting around wondering why it is that their wages just don't make it anymore, but this is exactly the underlying consequences that they were warning about literally 5 years ago, when it came to creating an inflationary scenario to save the monetary policy. This is right in line with everything that they said that they were going to do, right? I didn't know it was going to be tariffs. I didn't know what it was that they were going to do to try and break the supply chain or keep it broken or keep the belief of expectations of inflation to be elevated. I don't know what it was that they were going to do. I just knew that they were going to do it, right? Because they said that they were. Getting high and staying high. Right? Once you high, you never want to come down. These were titles of videos I did like 3-4 years ago. I like that one. Maybe everybody said it, man. Guns N' Roses reference. When you're high, you never want to come down. A penny saved is a penny earned, and a lot of people need to program this into their mind. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one thing, like, it's okay to spend money like on enjoying yourself. Just make sure that you have done, before you do that, pay yourself first, right? Pay yourself, like, soon as you get paid, you get a paycheck, immediately deploy. Okay, I got ding, 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 ding. This is where this money goes. Pay the bills. Okay, now I got some money. Cool, let's go shoot some pool. Right? If you do it like that every single time, you can enjoy some of your money. Right? You can enjoy going out and, hanging out and doing whatever, going on vacations or something. But paying yourself first is by far the most critical thing. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and then you're enjoying these luxurious experiences, then it's just like, yeah, no wonder why you're like, falling behind, right? All right. Be his good money gets chased out, right, Brody? Yep. Gresham's law is bad money chases out good money. Yeah. See, let's explain that real quick, just so people kind of understand Gresham's law. Gresham's law is one of the best ones to understand on why it is that you will never find gold or silver or Bitcoin or anything else ever introduced as a currency or as a world reserve currency, so long as you have a fiat currency dominating the world reserve currency's status. Right? So ultimately, so long as everybody is accepting United States dollars around the globe, even if they don't want to, but they're still doing it, then you will always find that those dollars will chase gold and Bitcoin and silver out of the economy. Now, ultimately, think about it like this. If you have dollars in one hand and gold in the other, or a chunk of silver in the other, and you come to me and you're like, hey, man, I want to buy your computer from you, right? And so I got my computer here, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll sell you my computer. And you say to me, well, do you accept cash, dollars, or do you accept gold and silver? And I say, yeah, I'll take either one. I don't care, right? I mean, both of them are good for me. Are you really going to hand me that gold and silver, or are you going to hand me the dollars? Most likely you're going to hand me the dollars, right? And you're going to put the gold and silver in your pocket, because gold and silver are good money. Bitcoin's good money. It's limited in amount, there's only so much that's going to be had. So you're going to hold on to that, and the bad currency, the dollars, is what's going to be put into circulation, and that's what you're going to give me for the computer. So the dollars gets used in circulation, and the gold and silver and Bitcoin get hoarded away. Now, let's think about it. If the dollar was to completely fail, which is not happening anytime soon, I don't believe that it's going to happen. It's a long ways down the road. Could it happen? Absolutely. All fiat currencies come to an end. I do not see the end in sight. Now, if it was to take place, big what if, then Thayer's law kicks in. Thayer's law says that good money will chase out bad because the bad money is no longer accepted, right? Meaning that it's no longer settling debt. It's no longer being accepted from my computer. I will not take it from you. This is now Thayer's law kicking in, saying, okay, good money chases out bad, but the bad money has to be completely unaccepted in every way, shape, and form, right? And now you can create like legal tender laws that prevent Thayer's law from kicking in. But again, it doesn't mean that the underlying economic force isn't there, wanting to push out that bad money if it has completely collapsed, even if you have a government saying, no, you have to use it, you have no other choice, right? Think about it. If the government wasn't there, it would immediately disappear and Thayer's law would kick in. Right. Does that all make sense? All right. All righty. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for all the super chats of $15. We got 241 people watching with 116 likes. Hitting that like button is one of the easiest ways you can support the Uneducated Economist. By hitting the thumbs up button, the YouTube algorithm grabs the video, spreads it around for more people to join in. Sharing the video is also one of the greatest ways you can help help support the Uneducated Economist. Sharing the video, again, the YouTube algorithm recognizes the sharing of the video and therefore goes out there and shares it with even more people, spreads it around. Thank you, everybody who has purchased the Cantillon essay off of the Amazon affiliate link, and then also making purchases off of Amazon just using the Amazon affiliate link. By clicking on that Amazon affiliate link, you are supporting the Uneducated Economist by putting anything in that cart for the next 24 hours and making the purchase in the next 30 days. I get a little commission off of all those things. So it's a simple, easy way to support the Uneducated Economist by making your Amazon purchases by following that link first. Podcast, we're getting the podcast episodes up and running. Sometimes it takes us a little bit to get them uploaded up there, but if you would rather listen to these videos as opposed to watching them here on YouTube, you can always join the podcast, which is, links down in the description of the video for that. What are the self-promotion? Thank you for the people who have joined in on Patreon just recently. I will try to do more writings. I've been putting out writings fairly recently. I've been trying to do more of them. I hesitate on it because I don't want to make any promises on it because, it kind of takes a lot, but I really enjoy doing it when I do. So there's some great content there on Patreon that you can go and follow and support the Uneducated Economist with that as well. Thank you for the super chat here, Night Term, with the $2. Would you condone guerrilla marketing of your channel? What's guerrilla marketing mean? I'm sorry. I'm not understanding what guerrilla marketing is. All right. A blessed day to us all. Alrighty. It was a memory man. Or code that links your stuff. QR. Huh. Interesting. I guess I never really thought about, other marketing options. I just kind of just do. Send me an email on it. We'll talk about it. I also want to, throw it out there for anybody who is interested in it. Occasionally, and I've just recently had an inquiry on it again, to do consultation calls. So I do offer up a consultation calls for anybody who's like wanting to have a conversation. I haven't really have a priced at all. I do the discussion, preliminary and kind of, set it up a little bit ahead of time. But if anybody wanted to do a consultation call, ask some questions about the credible threat theory, about the lumber industry or anything else like that, that's always available for you. If you just want to send me an email, put consultation call or something in the description or in the subject line of it. All right, guys, I'm going to go to work. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.